ends there. Great.
So I think we started.
Good. Good. So with that, we'll move forward to the next slide. So welcome and thanks for joining. And this is a super important process, as Director Roberts pointed out. It's the first time that Electoral Area G is looking at creating the OCP. So with that, we're going to talk about what an OCP is, and more importantly, why do one? So going back to those basics. We'll also talk about the process and then of an OCP, or putting it together, and then quickly get into what we know about Area G, and then what we've heard from you in particular. And then after which, at the end of the presentation, we're going to ask you if what we heard to date and what we know is right. You know, are we headed in the right direction? And so that's kind of the main objective of this open house, is to sort of come back and say, here's what we know now that we've gathered from all of the resident surveys and things that we have looked into, you know, and the input we're looking for is are we on the right track? Okay, next slide. This is, won't apply tonight necessarily because we just have the two people, but it's just a quick note, because we're online, and unfortunately we are online because obviously it's much easier and better to talk in person, and as well online really limits people in the sense that not everybody can get online, not everybody can be online, not everybody knows how to do that as well. So it's not necessarily convenient and accessible for everyone. So we acknowledge that, and we're reaching out in other ways to take that chance, or to get people involved in that. But so tonight we're just going to if we have discussion that's really important, just to ensure to be mindful of people's opinions and thoughts, and respectful with our language as we go through. So next slide. And I'll hand it over to Jordan to talk about how you can communicate with us through this presentation.
Yeah, so we like to just do a little overview of Zoom at the start of these presentations. Everyone's made it this far, so that's a good sign. But just a little reminder of how the chat function works. If you're not comfortable using the chat, or you have thoughts later, you can feel free to email. You can use my email or find it on Regional Connections. And you can also wait till the end of the presentation while we'll open it up for a verbal discussion. So with Zoom, on the bottom of your screen, you'll see these buttons. The important one is this mute, unmute. We tend to keep it muted when we're not speaking, just so no background noise interferes. And then we have chat in the middle, and if you click on that, you'll be able to send messages to the group. So I will send one now, and you should see that pop up, the message saying hello. And we'll use that at various points throughout this presentation to record our thoughts. And then there's also this reactions thing, which I don't think we'll need to worry about. That allows you to raise your hand if there are a lot of people in the group waiting to speak. But
in this case,
if you're on your phone, yeah. I know it looks like there's someone joining on their phone. Zoom does allow you to chat from your phone as well. I'm not sure if you can see the screen share, but there's this little button at the bottom that says more. And you can click on that, and then through the menu, you'll see chat as well. And so to get us going on the chat, if you can type in the community that you're joining us from, or the area, then we'll get to see a sense of who's in the room.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks, Jordan.
Margaret, you're on mute. You can welcome. Are you having trouble getting onto the chat?
Yes, I see it there. Okay, here it is. Okay, there.
Great, thank you. That's good. I'm glad you found it.
I think I found it.
Good.
Type a message, okay.
Perfect. So now that that's taken care of and you know the chat, we'll be using that function through the presentation. So you're welcome to add ideas. If you have questions as we go through, you can pop them in chat, or as we go through the presentation, we'll be asking questions and you can put the answers in chat. So taking a step back, we're going to start with what is an OCP, and for this, we're just going to quickly watch a video, and then I'll sort of summarize it. So just to give it's fast. Jordan will put that on for us.
In November 2019, we asked what your vision would be for your communities for the next 20 years. You answered. You wanted to be involved. This official community plan will help us do just that.
Electoral Area G is developing its first ever official community plan, or OCP for short. Area G is the second largest electoral area in the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, or RDOS, and is one of only 2 areas without an OCP. So what's an OCP? An OCP is a guiding document that includes vision, goals, objectives, policies, and supporting maps. It aims to answer some big questions, such as what does the community value? What do we want to protect or encourage? When growth occurs, where does it go? And how do we achieve our community goals? In this way, the OCP helps coordinate planning activities, identifies where to focus investment, and guides the regional board, RDOS staff, the province, and the community overall on how Area G will evolve and grow in the future. It also informs businesses, developers, and neighboring jurisdictions, building relationships and giving them certainty and clarity on what the community feels is important. So why now? In 2019, the RDOS went out and asked residents whether they wanted a say in how future land use decisions are made. Through Let's Talk Land Use, we heard from people across Area G. It showed there was an interest in creating Area G's first official community plan. Public consultation will be conducted over the next year with the aim to finalize a draft OCP bylaw by spring of 2022. To get involved, check out the Regional Connections website, participate in online forums and surveys, watch for information in your community, and sign up for updates, or email us directly.
This is your plan. This is your future. Be a part of it.
Get involved, Area G. Be part of the plan.
Great, thanks. So that's your quick summary of an OCP, and I'll just recap there for a quick second. In summary, basically, an OCP is, and you can move forward in the slide. So this shows here an OCP is a set of policy statements, all on the key things that matter to people. And next. And basically a series of maps that designate land use in particular, but all other features or aspects that the community feel are important to them. So that's really, a very overall idea. So together, both those, this makes up the document, or essentially, it becomes a guidebook that shares the community's vision with everyone else around. So that's what the OCP is. Next one. So that brings me to why do an OCP. So next slide. And this is a really important, as well as this morning at this morning session, a number of people brought up implementation and a number of ideas around an OCP. So why are we doing an OCP, or why are we looking at that? And there's basically a few key things to know here. The first is that the OCP is actually a bylaw in itself, but it's, as the video noted, it's very high level, as in it outlines a vision for the community and the general directions that the community wants to go. So it does not detail what you can or can't do on your property. If you wanted that, that would be zoning. And it's the OCP is a framework document overall. And what it primarily does is it really, as Director Roberts noted, it helps the area director and the RDOS staff know what the community wants, and therefore they can advocate on their behalf, and it helps them make decisions. So for example, just to give a few, say a neighboring community wants to allow a big new development right at the border of Area G. It's not actually in Area G, but it's you know, in a neighboring community. That, you know, Director Roberts can advocate or comment on that development in a neighboring community based on what is in the OCP. Or say, for instance, the Agricultural Land Commission embarks on a new policy for ALR lands. And that would affect, obviously, the lands of residents living in the ALR. So it allows, again, the RDOS and Director Roberts to advocate or present what it is that the area residents are looking for. It also, you know, other health authority or other agencies that are seeking information on the area, you know, related to key health interests or concerns of Area G, can use this document as a reference. So in this way, the OCP ends up becoming a guidebook for the director and RDOS staff to advocate for residents and what they want, or often, sometimes, not what they don't want. And they have something in front of them that's concrete and documented to show for it. So this is what the OCP is. Lastly, this document sets the framework for future regulation, and that's the last bullet there. If needed. And this is really key because it also can be a very scary one, because Area G currently does not have any significant regulation. And so for many, this is great. This is often sometimes the reason why people actually live in the area. So, you know, moving towards something with an OCP can seem a little bit, you know, worrisome. So, but the key thing here is that this is the very point of the OCP. It can also support minimal regulation if preferred. So it's some communities may prefer more regulation, or some areas may need more regulation, but perhaps the overall community would like to move on protecting, say, better water quality or the landscapes they love so much from any change in land use or future development, but want less or no zoning regulation for now. So the OCP is sort of a way to do both. It allows, it basically is reflecting what the community wants. So yes, it establishes a framework for future regulation if needed or if supported too. So this is important to note for that. Next one. And so how will it affect me directly? And this is really important as well for people. And often we receive, or we had received a number of comments with the resident survey. It won't bring about a surge in development at all. It won't regulate buildings on private property, and it doesn't increase taxes, but it does, again, provide, as noted, direction to the RDOS and other agencies. It is a way for, because it's built on community engagement, it is a way for residents to have a say in what they want to see in land use in the future. So that's a really important aspect. It supports community values. The intent is to support community values. Its intent is not to regulate. You know, it also leads to future initiatives in that if there's grant opportunities for the RDOS, if there's other opportunities for partnerships with outside jurisdictions or agencies, it allows the RDOS to move forward on these things on behalf and with the support of residents, because it here is, you know, laid out for them in the OCP.
Can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah, please.
Just as an example of that, both rural Oliver, rural Osoyoos in their OCPs. I know Osoyoos has a brand new one, but the one previous to that, in their OCP, they talked about wanting to develop an agriculture area plan. Because there was a lot of agricultural issues that came up, but it wasn't something the OCP could delve into right at, you know, at the time the OCP was, but, you know, they talked about an agriculture area plan. So that went into the OCP as a desired implementation. And then when there was funding available through, there was a provincial agriculture investment fund or something, you know, the director advocated, well, at the board saying this is a project that their community wanted, and then RDOS staff resources were provided to complete those area plans. So again, you can kind of see the flow through of this. It's like what the community wants, and then it goes to the, you know, the board as a project, and then grantors will support that. And it also, you know, it does start with the community's desire to have these kind of projects initiated. So that's an example.
Thank you. That's excellent. Yeah, exactly. So how is an OCP created? And with this, I'll just run through our actual project process for this project. Next one. So what you see here on the screen is the project timeline, working from left to right. The process has 3 distinct phases. The first phase included understanding Area G, so just getting a good picture of Area G overall. So what we did is we compiled a background report that contains all the things we know about the area. And this report also helps identify where information is lacking. For instance, you know, as an example, if there isn't any available or there's outdated information for the area since 1994 or something, then that shows that there's a gap there in information overall. That might be something, and therefore it might be something that the OCP needs to flag. It's also an initial launch to the project in phase 1 to the residents, and in doing an initial, and it also serves to do an initial scan of key issues and concerns overall. So as well as what people love about their community. So that was the first part of phase 1. So essentially answering the question, what is this community all about? And then in phase 2, it's been primarily to reach out to residents. So first to confirm what we initially heard in phase 1, but then also to continue gathering input and start putting the foundation of the document together. And that's kind of what we're doing right here, right now. So moving forward, when we go into phase 3, we will start drafting the OCP, the actual document, based on all of the input that we received in phase 1 and phase 2. And then what we do is we go back out to residents after that, several times actually, in various ways to answer the question, did we get this right? And so there's very checks and balances as through the process as we go. It's an iterative process, and it's built primarily on what the community tells us. Next. That said, there are many different inputs to the process, and it's really important to keep this in mind because it's sometimes it can be a tricky part too. Often OCP processes are built on residential input, or they are built on resident input. In particular, this one, because it's the first OCP, and so largely this whole process is really focused on talking to residents in various ways, or getting input from residents in different ways. But this needs also to be balanced with other important inputs from other agencies, you know, such as the Health Authority and other jurisdictions or neighboring communities, and also the RDOS itself and other community groups and associations, as well as local business. All of those people and institutions will also provide input into the OCP, and they may have the same, or they may have different interests to those that are expressed with residents too. So it provides that wide range of diversity and understanding so that we understand what the focus areas are for this OCP. Next. So as I mentioned, an OCP is built on the input from residents. And so this slide just outlines some of the key engagement inputs for this process in particular. The first is that we have a citizens committee, and that is working directly with the team, as I noted in the beginning, and this is to help develop the structure and the framework of the OCP. And this committee will also be reviewing the draft OCP document, so when we start drafting it, and they will provide a recommendation to the RDOS on its review and moving forward. So that's a really helpful group. In addition, well, with some of the COVID restrictions, we've actually focused a lot on direct mail. So you out to residents for information purposes, but also to ask people for input and to ensure residents stay informed overall. We've also had one survey, but there'll be a few more to come There's additional open houses as we move into the drafting phase of the OCP. And then in the fall, we're actually going to look at as well focus groups for specific interests, for specific topics or interests within the OCP as we move forward. And then of course there's online activities and this platform, the RDOS Regional Connections, which we can provide the web link to if you haven't already seen it, is always open for input as we move through the process. There's a few activities there. Next. So great, you might be thinking, well, that all sounds great, but how do I actually get involved? Well, the way that you can participate is reviewing information that is out there on the RDOS Regional Connections in particular. That is kind of our hub, and we put all of the information that we have, everything, all the documents are public and in there. To participate in the online activities that are there, complete surveys and polls that come out, and you should, we're trying to do them resident direct to your mailbox. Attend scheduled events like this, so thank you, and providing your input. Email comments, that's also, it's a community, we can email comments directly. Speak to your neighbors, share ideas, and then of course, Director Roberts is well known in the area, as well as some of the committee members. So you can also share your thoughts directly and have discussions with both committee members and Director Roberts. Next. So if you remember, I mentioned in phase one, we reviewed all the information about the area and we compiled what's called the community profile. So this was the background document. It's, as I mentioned, also available on the RDOS Regional Connections website for your review. So you can download that document as well. And so what I'll do is I'll just take you through it quickly. So what is the community profile? It's essentially, it's a snapshot of Area G today. And it's organized using proposed, we say, OCP chapter areas. And that's, but remember, it's done at the very beginning. So that can change as we go through and as we understand more about the area. It also identifies key trends and issues for the area that we've picked up on as we've researched the area and looked at it. So here's a map of electoral area G, which is in the, it's a little more clear on my screen than the one that I'm seeing above. And this, you'll see electoral area G is actually, it's the kind of bluish green area. It's one of the largest in the RDOS. And so it also has a larger perimeter and therefore more neighbors. Area G includes traditional territory of the Salix people, and their traditional territory extends throughout and beyond Area G. So in addition, reserve lands of the Upper Similkameen and Lower Similkameen Indian bands are also located directly within, adjacent to and within Area G. So this is considered a very important part of the OCP process as well. Then of course, there are also communities of Headley, Olalla, and rural Karamias, where most of the population is in rural Karamias, as well as a number of mobile home communities, which are unique and we've identified as important communities in this area as well. Just taking a quick look at the population, overall the population has seen a slight decrease, but it's considered fairly stable. However, it's unclear if this will continue, and longer-term population figures for 2001 to 2016 suggest a possible gradual increase by 2026. Although we've also heard from people that one thing that they notice through the survey is that many more people are actually moving to the area. So perhaps that slight increase or gradual increase may change over the next coming years. Next. As well, and an important thing to note for OCPs in particular as well is the population of Area G, most is made up of those over the age of 65. So it makes up more than 40% of the population, which is quite high compared to the entire province overall, which is at 17%. And this trend is expected to continue in Area G over time. Next. Looking at water supply and quality, we recognized and noted that it's an ongoing issue. The RDOS currently administers the water system in the community of Olalla, And residents in other rural settlement areas get their water from private wells or water systems. So all properties are serviced as well with on-site septic or within a shared septic storage system. Next. We noted as well that Area G is composed of rare and ecologically significant ecosystems. So this is really important. There's a number of reports that talk about the mild climates and diverse landscapes that support a high level of diversity, including the greatest diversity of birds in the interior of BC and a significant number of breeding species. So some of these are actually endangered or threatened. Another note that we came up with this was that the most need a car to get around Area G because alternatives to driving are actually limited in Area G, affecting, of course, the oldest population as well as younger residents the most. And this is coupled with the fact that the population is actually aging, and so the need to access services in larger centers is growing, along with that needing a car to get around. Next. And as well, the report notes that it's an important and a very important one that's a growing concern, I think, year to year, is climate change impacts in the area. And in particular, this is specific to the drought-related forest fires and recent flooding that really highlight and underscore our need to be prepared in the future for more frequent and extreme weather patterns. Next. The majority of people are employed in the resource sector. The report states this is in agriculture, forestry, fishing, and mining, or retail trade, and also that over 75% of the workforce commutes outside their community to work. And this has actually increased by around 30% over the past 10 years. So it's actually going up that people are needing to go outside of the community for work. And then lastly, the report notes that housing in Area G is primarily single family. So 60% of housing is single family, and the remaining housing being in the form of mobile homes, so 34%, and duplex or semi-detached housing, which is only 6%. So as we age, the report notes that there may be a greater demand for smaller, maybe more affordable one-bedroom or age-friendly homes that allow residents to stay in the community as they age. And that's what age-friendly, just generally speaking, means that you don't have to move out of your community as you age to attain the services and that you may need while aging. Next. So this next section is just going to quickly review what we heard from you. And this is, next slide. This was primarily obtained from the resident survey, and the resident survey was posted from March, the end of March all the way through April. It was available in both hard copy as well as being posted online. And it was advertised in a number of places to get the word out that it was there. And we really, we did well. We got 124 responses that were received. And this number may seem low for some, but it actually is a very good response rate in comparison to other areas, electoral areas in the RDOS as well. So 124 responses received. Next slide. So really the objective of this survey in particular was to understand residents and communities' interests within Area G. So that's kind of, we're grounding ourselves and figuring out, okay, we looked at the report and, we've put this report together and surveyed what's out there. Now let's hear from the residents. And that really helps us identify key priorities for the OCP moving forward. It's basically what do we need to look at here? Next one. And we looked at first who responded to the survey, and this also helps us really understand who we need to target. So we heard a lot from rural Karamias. That was the highest percentage of response, as well as a fairly good turnout for Headley, Village of Karamias, Olalla, and other parts of Area G, or those who may be owning property in Area G but live elsewhere outside. And we noted that 83% of the respondents were permanent full-time residents. So that was great too. It was a good range, but like I said, it helps us know which communities and areas to target more for future surveys as well. Next one. So this is you're looking at the respondents in terms of age profile. And this is actually, you'll note that we didn't have anyone from 19 years under responding to the survey, and very few people between 20 and 39. But we did have a good response between 40 and 59 and 60 and 79 years. And then again, low for 80 plus. But this actually looked fairly good. It sort of reflected the population. But we did note that there's obviously that gap of younger people. And so then that helps us understand that in future surveys and future engagement, we need to start targeting a little bit more of that age group overall. Next slide. So this is what basically I'll take you quickly through what residents told us. So initially residents, we asked about what they liked about the community, and what we heard was that residents really enjoy being close to nature and clean water and air, the outdoor and recreation. Perhaps that's what it is that brought people to the area. They enjoy close-knit community, and in particular, and we've heard this from the Citizens Committee too, that one of the key things is obviously that the rural lifestyle, quiet, slow-paced, creative, and minimally regulated is very attractive to the folks who live in Area G overall. Next slide. However, and as well, we heard what sort of needs attention in Area G, and what people are thinking about in terms of what needs to be looked at. And there was a number of things that people told us in the survey. Unkept properties, illegal dumping is an issue in some communities. There's limited services and infrastructure, which can be frustrating. Unreliable telecommunications, so internet service, and poor water quality in some areas, which is worrying. Limited arts and culture venues, and wanting some more opportunities there. Some people have noted that they had seen a loss in local business and were interested or concerned with that. And then also safety concerns, within some of them specific to certain communities, but speeding and buildings in disrepair and crime being some key issues that people were thinking about and that were occupying their thoughts on that. Next one. So then we also asked people, what have you noticed has changed over the years? And this really helps us understand what kind of key changes that people are thinking about, as well as trends in the area that we need to sort of research if we haven't already picked up on it. So what's changed? Well, people noted to us that there's less housing availability in this area. There's an increased number of people who are moving to the area, and that's changing things and dynamics for residents. There's more businesses closing, as I noted in the last one. And then of course that there's a concern, and people are concerned about that increased wildfire and flooding events that are happening. And they're noticing that a lot more over the last number of years. Next slide. So what I'm going to do now is just ask you, so here's what we heard in the survey and what we uncovered for the report. Did we get it right? Is that, do we have the full picture here, I guess, is kind of the question that I'm asking. And what else would you like to add to that or comment on? And there's the options to respond are up there. The first is the Zoom chat. So you can pop your answer right in the Zoom there and note what you think for that one, as well as you can also email us afterwards. And the email address is up there, jordan@ecoplan.ca. So whichever is easiest for you. And this can be after the presentation as well. It doesn't have to be during. We can move forward and then you can email later, or you can also put it in the Zoom chat as you think about it. So just thinking about all of the key points that I touched on, as well as the notes from the background report, and then whether we have the full picture. Is there something else that we missed there? So I'll let you do. Sorry,
I was going to say something. Because there's only 2 people, I wonder if we could just, they could just unmute and say something if they wanted as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm just to give options. We can. Yeah. Absolutely. For sure. Well. Good. So next slide. If you think of any other comments or thoughts after, just pop them into Zoom chat or email. So moving forward, the input that we received for that survey helps us start developing, a structure for the OCP document. And really it starts allowing us to figure out what areas to focus on and what needs to be said in the document overall. So I'll just take you through what we heard and how we've sort of started putting it in. So next slide. So just to explain, typically an OCP contains an overall vision statement. And so this is as if I say, I said to you in one sentence, describe what you'd like to see in your area and your community and what it should look like in the future. Acknowledging that whether we like it or not, obviously things are changing around us. And in fact, change is actually why we do an OCP, so that we can sort of direct that change and in a way that suits the community that we live in. So based on what we heard from the community, these were the kind of key themes that you see here that surfaced for a vision statement. So this is sort of the direction that we're headed. We heard, quiet rural lifestyle, this beautiful landscape, natural areas, and all the outdoor recreation opportunities that we imagine in the future that our community is safe and has a thriving agriculture and local business, because obviously agriculture in particular also contributes to that look and feel, and that there's improved infrastructure, slightly wider demographic profile. A number of people who we heard said that there's kind of a lack of younger families and individuals, and they're hoping to see more, and that there's good housing and housing opportunities. So that was what we heard in terms of what we have for the future. So, and typically in OCPs, along with that vision statement, an OCP also outlines key goals and objectives. So as you heard in the video. And so these key goals and objectives, that it's very planner language, but these are essentially the main aspects that residents feel are important to their community and wish to express a direction on. So a preference for a direction or about overall. So based on resident input, the following key aspects were surfaced. And the first is protecting community watersheds for water quality and quantity. Obviously, some communities, this is more important than others, which we'll touch on. Next slide. Another theme that surfaced is ALR, maintaining ALR lands and agriculture lands primarily for farming and food production. So knowing that this one obviously contributes to the culture of the place, the look and the feel of the community, and that recognizing it's a foundation of the area. Next one. Noting that another thing was that some communities in Area G are in particular more affected by growth and potential development. So either by nearby communities outside of the area or within the communities themselves. We heard that other communities are actually struggling with needing room for or better types of development to accommodate residents or even address or new or seasonal residents. So defining what this looks like and defining areas for future growth came up as being an important topic to address in the OCP. Next one. And we also heard that economic development was important for serving the community needs and supporting residents who live and work in the community. In particular, people noted that tourism and outdoor recreation were key in the sense that residents identified those as potential areas for further development in the future. So these are, people commonly noted that tourism and small business and outdoor recreation all had kind of a link and interrelationship with each other. Next. This is, I think, the second last one. Environmental protection was also identified along with the outdoor and natural areas and natural beauty by residents. And this was a key theme that also contributed to why residents choose to live there. So we heard that fairly clear in the survey results. Next one. And then lastly, with the known aging population in particular, and more residents moving to the area, it was no surprise that ensuring affordable housing and availability and options to age in place, as I said, meaning the ability to stay within your own community as you age, is important to folks in Area G as well. So then that brings us to the next question, of which, again, you can options to respond or to email afterwards, or just pop it in the Zoom chat. But this is a two-part question. The first and the second is, do these match your priorities? So looking at those priorities that came out of the survey, these priorities are what we heard from residents through the survey. You know, do these match your priorities? And also, is there anything missing from there? Okay, so in terms of just finishing up the last few slides, community differences. So the survey did actually ask about or ask residents about some of the key differences in their community or specific to their community concerns. And Headley noted there was community and social services was definitely a need. There was concerns about the water infrastructure and supports for local business, or in particular, encouraging more local business. So it was some of sort of the top priorities and thoughts on residents in Headley. And then Olalla, it was really, a lot of their comments were primarily focused on the protection of a quiet lifestyle and the land that's there around them. So you know, really keeping that things pretty much the same as what they currently have. And then in terms of rural Karameas, we heard a number of residents express a lot of concerns about managing growth and development in the area or directly adjacent to them, and then protection of rural agriculture, as well as access to natural areas and the outdoor recreation opportunities that are in and around Area G. So next slide. I think we've heard a little bit about what else matters in terms of the community. So that's there's also an option to add in anything there.
And if you are going to email, then it's really helpful if you start with your community first. So you know, if you're living in Headley and say, you know, something, it'd be great for us to know that it's Headley that you're talking about, not Olalla. So
right.
A heads up to answer this question.
Great. Okay, so and then moving along, next steps in this process, just to give a general idea of how we're, you know, what we take here tonight, we'll be using to help develop that framework and basis of the OCP over the summer. And as I mentioned earlier, the online activities on the RDOS regional connection sites will remain open for further comments. And there's lots of opportunities that will be coming up in the fall. In particular, we'll be having focus groups to review key parts of the OCP, or the key structure parts of that we just described in terms of priority areas, as well as another resident survey that'll be coming up, and a draft OCP, another open house, which will hopefully be in person and not be online. So, so those are kind of our immediate next steps going through. And as I mentioned, it's really an iterative process. At every step of the way, we'll come back to the community and say, did we do this right? And then we go away again and, you know, gather the input and use that input to refine the document until we get to a point where we're able to, you know that it's very much supported by the community moving forward. Next one. And so again, we don't really need to take a break, I don't think, because we're pretty much done. If there's any additional thoughts that you'd like to share with us about the presentation overall, again, you can options to respond or in the Zoom chat or emailing Jordan afterwards. And so we'll stop the recording, and then we'll open it up for any further discussion. And we also have a question there in particular. If you have questions for us about the whole process or about the OCP in particular, to ask them now, as well as just a general question. We've been talking about communities in particular, but what else matters to Area G as a whole? So just taking a step back and a wider look overall is sometimes a good thing to do. Okay, thank you.